saying that Lib Dem press releases were a boomerang, designed to attack opponents but walloping the critic right back on the nose. Well, today's motion is by the very definition a boomerang motion. Many of the arguments about criticism of the Conservative Government and its treatment of the Scottish Parliament have already been rehearsed today, and many of them I agree with. I am in favour of a federal solution for the United Kingdom. I want proportional representation, I want a written constitution, and I also want the abolition of the House of Lords. But it's depressing, really depressing, that we can't get two mature governments just to work together and sort out these problems. But this is the Scottish Parliament, and we are here to hold the Scottish Government to account for its actions. On the 19th of September 2018, the Scottish Parliament voted by 63 votes to 61 for a motion calling for the Scottish Government to halt national testing in Primary 1. 5 years on from that vote, more than 90,000 tests are still taking place every year for children as young as 4 years old, damaging young children, ignoring our Parliament. But what was worse is that the Scottish Government, immediately after that vote, at the time, declared their intention to completely ignore the vote of the Scottish Parliament, the democratically elected Scottish Parliament. So much for respecting the authority of Holyrood. The last Information Commissioner criticised the Scottish Government's handling of freedom of information requests. He found unjustifiable significant delays. He found that responses to journalists' inquiries were delayed and only released when authorised by unelected SNP special advisers. The freedom of information laws are amongst the most important and earliest laws passed by this Parliament. But when laws of this Parliament don't suit the SNP government, they just ignore them. In June, the First Minister said that Scotland had the majority of the renewables and natural resources in the UK. The correct figure for 2022 was 26%. I don't think that's a majority, and it's not even one-third. I hear a member say, what's this got to do with this debate? This debate is about respecting the authority of the Scottish Parliament, and those terms are not set out by the SNP, they're set out by the Scottish Parliament. Now, we all make mistakes, but what makes this worse is that it appears that independent civil servants retrospectively created statistics to justify an incorrect statement from the First Minister. Eventually, Mr Yousaf said he intended to say per capita in his...
Sir Rennie, could you resume your seat? Point of order, Alistair Allen.
Thank you. I realise that members are entitled or expected to address the motion before them. Can I ask if you have any guidance on when the member intends to come round to the UK Internal Market Act?
I thank Alistair Allen for the point of order. I think Mr Rennie has made clear how he's linking his remarks to the motion. He can choose to address that motion in any way he likes. Willie, Rennie to resume.
And if the member would like to, he could look at the Business Bulletin, which is published every day, and it sets out my amendment, which is exactly the terms that I'm speaking about today. So eventually, Mr Yousaf said he intended to say per capita in his original answer. But it's statistical mumbo-jumbo to say that there's a majority per capita. And the request for the First Minister to refer himself to the independent adviser on the ministerial code, unanswered for almost 3 weeks. That's not protecting the powers of the Scottish Parliament. But the SNP have been at this for years. Back in 2012, Alex Salmond was found out on the EU legal advice. The then First Minister, hailed as a hero by those on the SNP benches, repeatedly said that Scotland would be an automatic member of the European Union. He asserted that this position was supported by his government's legal advice. Asked whether he had sought advice from the Scottish Government's own law officers, Mr Salmond replied, "We have, yes, in terms of the debate." His then-Deputy, Nicola Sturgeon, undermined this claim when she admitted ministers had not sought formal advice from the law officers. Tens of thousands of pounds were wasted in court to keep the non-existing advice secret, undermining this Parliament when it suits them. They repeatedly flout the rules that announcements should be made to this Parliament first. Just last year, the presiding officer reprimanded Angus Robertson for releasing his latest independence report to the media before the Parliament, making the rules up to suit themselves. On top of all this, there are the endless noddy debates while the SNP avoid the real debates that we should be discussing in this Parliament. NHS waiting times, mental health waits, the yawning poverty-related attainment gap in schools, the closure of police stations, teacher unemployment, the sluggish economy, the failure to deliver 2,000 jobs at the Lochaber smelter, selling off Scotland on the cheap, the ferries where the costs have almost tripled, the dumping of sewage in our rivers, the £50 million lost with BIFAB, the failure to sell Prestwick. The list goes on, and the boomerang goes round and round and round.